Welcome to the Writer's Bar. I'm Baron Birtcher. I'm your host, author of Hard Latitudes, and we're being brought to you on the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. It is my great pleasure to have a very special guest tonight. The author of dozens of best-selling books and a brand new one that just came out, the winner of 3 Edgar Awards, the recipient of the LA Times Book Prize for Best Mystery, and we're only just scratching the surface. Well, I don't want to jump ahead on that. Let me just say, welcome, T Jefferson Parker, and thanks for being at the Writer's Bar. Cheers.
Nice to be here. There's no other bar I'd rather be in the entire universe right now, Baron. So thanks for the invite.
Right on. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Let me start by saying there were 2 things that absolutely knocked me out about the book, not the least of which is probably the coolest cover of any book I've seen in I don't know how long.
Isn't it something? A lot of people just love that cover, and I'm one of them. When I first saw it, I thought, oh boy.
It's so evocative of what you end up writing about. So we'll come back to that too. The other thing is just the title. The minute I heard it, we grew up not too far from one another. I grew up in Dana Point. You were a Laguna guy, and that's just a stone's throw up Coast Highway.
Right next door.
And I remember the old legend when I was a kid was that Thousand Steps Beach was the nude beach. So every teenage guy I knew was making some sort of a plan as to how to get to Thousand Steps Beach. And by the way, I don't think that ever turned out to even be true, did it?
I was going to say there's no naked people there, but it's a heck of a nice beach.
Well, the myth survived anyway.
Good.
Hey, so before we talk about the book, I was hoping maybe you would bring us up to speed on kind of, you were a reporter before you were ever a best-selling author. What was the path that led you to being interested in being a reporter? And then subsequently, from reporter to author, and how did that skill set inform your authorship?
Yeah, good question. You know what I did when I was really young, when I was in college, I think. I swiped Hemingway's advice about teaching yourself, learning to write by working for a newspaper. He always thought that was a great idea, and he did that. So I did it too. Monkey see, monkey do. And I got a job on a weekly newspaper, a little paper called the Newport Ensign, pretty much right out of college, and that's where I learned the basics of writing journalism. The who, what, where, when, and why that we're all taught, and I took that job gladly. It was really hard to get. Those were the Woodward Bernstein years, and every kid coming out of college had a degree in journalism, and I just had an English degree. So it was a hard job to get, but when I finally got it, I was happy to get it, and I took that job. I wanted that job specifically so that I could teach myself how to write well enough to write in publish fiction someday. I never really wanted to be a newspaper reporter, and I did it for 5 years, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But I did it to learn what journalism could teach me.
Always with the Ensign, or were you? Did you move around?
Moved around a little bit. I did 2 years with the Ensign and 3 years with the Daily Pilot. Remember the Daily Pilot?
I remember the Daily Pilot. Yeah, we had a subscription to that.
Yeah, they covered Dana Point and Laguna, almost all the coastal Orange County. So I was a journalist for 5 years, and then suddenly, without my asking, I was offered a job with an aerospace company in Newport Beach called Ford Aeronutronic, and it kind of caught me by surprise. But I took the job because journalism doesn't pay particularly well. The hours are long, and there's a lot of pressure. You're always under deadline pressure. And I thought that I had learned my journalism well enough to go on to write some fiction. And I took this job as a technical editor at Ford Aerospace. We were working on an anti-aircraft mounted gun, a tank that shot helicopters out of the air, basically. And I did that for 3 years. And I taught myself to write fiction on after work as a journalism and as an editor, and then on weekends and holidays, I was a bachelor, and I stayed a bachelor well into my life in order to be able to write when I wasn't working. And so that was kind of the way that I plotted out my career as a fiction writer, even though I had no real formal training in that at all. Did you study writing as a young man yourself?
No, not at all. My degree is in finance, and
okay.
I've always had a fondness for music, and I was a musician for a long while. So maybe that's where the creative part of it snuck in. But no formal education whatsoever in the craft.
Okay, interesting.
So tell me how did Laguna Heat then come to be? That was a sensation.
It was. I thought that happened every time that you write a book. I found out later that it doesn't happen every time you write a book, but that book got well, the publishers loved it for the main thing. It took me 5 years to write that thing, and I wrote it 5 different times, and I threw away 6 different times, and I threw away 500-page drafts, 5 of them. I threw away 2,500 pages of written Laguna Heat before I wrote draft number 6. Which I told myself that when I went to write this book, it would be this draft. It would be the last time I did it. I've been working on the book for 5 years. It wasn't good enough to submit yet. I knew that. And I made a deal with myself that I'd write it one more time, spend 1 more year on this draft of Laguna Heat, and I would excise from that draft, and I would banish from that draft any conscious efforts to duplicate or echo my literary heroes. As I like to tell the story, and it's basically true. I mean, I wrote a draft of Laguna Heat that was bad Hemingway, and a year later I wrote a draft that was bad Tom McGuane, and a year later I wrote a draft that was bad Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and a year after that I wrote a draft of bad Jim Harrison, and I forget who the 5th was, but the 6th one was I got rid of all those guys. I tried to banish their voices from my mind and on the page, and I finally came up with a book after 6 drafts that was not a great novel maybe, but a good mystery, and it's all mine. I invented my voice came out in that, and when I was able to turn down the volume on all my heroes.
That takes a lot of courage to spike that many pages of hard work.
It does. It hurts. Yeah, it hurts. And one thing that was neat about working as a newspaper reporter, that one of many things working as a newspaper reporter that helped my book writing, was I learned to write fast, and with conviction, with confidence. You kind of build your confidence as a newspaper guy. You start with these little stories, and they get longer and longer, and details come later. And I was able to bring some velocity to the writing of Laguna Heat, so that when one draft was done, the first draft of Bad Hemingway, say, and I read it at the end of the year, I was crestfallen. I thought I had such a good draft, but it really wasn't good. And I had just enough critical, brain power from my years at UCI as an English major, just to know that. I would read that manuscript and go, this isn't good. I know this isn't good. So whatever, write another one, write it fast. And a year later, there was another 450 pages sitting on the desk. So it was kind of a long, very interesting process. My next book took 3 years. My book after that took 2 years. And finally, when I hit book maybe, I don't know, say 5 or 6, 7, the publishers put me on the mystery writer, thriller writers book a year fast track. That was what they offered. And they wanted a book a year, and they wanted to publish it. They wanted a mystery a year, crime story a year, and they wanted to publish it the same week every year. I mean, they slot their authors into this schedule, and which is cool. It's great for the author. You have a deadline, you know what's going to be and stuff. But having that, having that sort of work ethic, being held to that kind of work ethic is kind of good. And that's another reason why writing fast is a savior. I always, I finish my drafts in 6 months, and then I'll spend 3 months rewriting them, sometimes more than that. So I'll always go back and make every sentence as good as I can, and make everything logical and explicable and according to character, you know. But the first draft, I come out like a greyhound, you know. I just go.
Do you let it sit when your manuscript is finished? Do you let it sit for a bit, or do you just come back next day and just start editing?
I let it sit. You know. And when I finish that first draft, you know, I print out a copy for my wife, who's a terrifically good reader, and I send electronic copies now to my editor and my agent. And then I sit back and wait for notes, basically. And I'll do nothing. Sometimes I'll write a short story. Sometimes I'll go fishing. I mean, I don't know. I'll waste 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it takes, to get the notes back, you know. And then I'll read those and get in on the revision.
Yeah, well, I totally relate to that process. I kind of have to let it sit and walk away for a minute and do something else, because I don't know why.
Yeah, I would think, especially with music, that would be necessary to just put it down and stop the sound for X days, weeks maybe, and come back with a fresh ear.
Yeah, like books, you know, the characters, the music, the notes, all of it. It lives in your head for so much. Sometimes you forget. Well, did I write that, or did I just think I wrote that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I know.
That's a fascinating story, by the way, about your first 2 or 3 books. I had no idea that was the process, but that's a considerable amount of self-discipline that shows, you know, in the success of your writing over the years, no doubt. So 1,000 Steps. You've written Laguna before. You lived there, you grew up there, I gather, right? You went to high school there?
I grew up over the hill in Tustin, and then I moved to Laguna when I was whatever. I lived in Laguna for 20 years. When I was between age 30 and 50, I lived in Laguna Beach. But yeah, I grew up in Tustin.
Well, that's same neck of the woods, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, as a kid, a 14-year-old kid specifically, in 1968, when 1,000 Steps is set, I was 14, and I was making raids on Laguna with my buddies. Our moms and dads would drive us to Laguna and dump us off and come back and pick us up at the end of the day. And we would body surf, and we would go get burgers, and we would, you know, go to the Sound Spectrum and buy vinyl records and just all the cool stuff that you can do when you're a kid in Laguna, you know. And to my eyes, to my 14-year-old eyes, Laguna Beach in 1968 was just this phantasmagoric, psychedelic, kaleidoscopic, weird, strange place. Physically, gorgeously beautiful. Its beaches are nonpareil, I think. The village is artsy, and there was lots of galleries and painters and strange people around, and creative people, creative types, in a good way, I mean that. And in 68, of course, it was invasion of the hippies, you know, because the Summer of Love was 1967 in San Francisco, and they all got sick of that, so they came to Laguna. And so Laguna was just exploding with these young people with crazy hair and their tie-dye, and, you know, all the dope they brought with them and stuff. The whole town smelled like marijuana that year. I remember that as a 14-year-old. And just the general level of visual spectacle that was around, you know, the demonstrations, you know, marches, the cops chasing people around, all the dope in the air, the deals going down that you could see, you know, no secret to who's selling what to whom. And again, against that backdrop of beauty and nature and the beach and everything. So, you know, to me as a 14-year-old, I was just gobsmacked by the whole thing, you know. And I remember, I lived that really intensely, collecting those moments and those thoughts and those experiences subconsciously. I had no idea I was going to be a writer when I was 14, and so I wasn't saving them for a book. But when it came time to write a book 2 years ago, for me to write another novel, I thought, you know, I'm gonna go back to 1968, and I'm gonna ransack my memory for everything that I did and imagined and thought in that city at that time. And so that's what I did, and that's why 1,000 Steps has kind of an immersive feeling to it, is the way my editor likes to describe it. And I think that's good because the novel feels in a lot of ways lived because I was there and I saw that stuff, and I lived through it. And I didn't do every incident that happened in the book. I'm not saying that, but I was there kind of as an eyewitness to that time. And I think that made the writing real alive and vibrant. And some reporters have asked me, writers have said, well, gosh, you must have done a tremendous amount of research for, to get all that detail of Laguna Beach at specific time and specific place. And actually, I didn't do any research at all. I mean, it was all lived. It all came. I looked up the street names and stuff like that. But it was all kind of there for me. It was a gift.
It so comes through on the page, and this will just sound like such fanboy pandering, but I have to tell you, it's just so real. And my new series is set in the early 70s. Same kind of thing. You mine your experience, and you try to do it in as authentic as in a way as you can. And if your memory is a good friend, then it really does come through. I remember so well, and you captured it so well on the page here. The Taco Bell, and then right across PCH on the east side of the highway was the what was it called? The Mystic Arts World was right
Mystic
across
Arts
the street.
World,
where all the Krishnas would walk up and down and all this stuff. And I was forbidden by my parents to ever go in there. You're not allowed to go in there. And on the other side, with the Taco Bell was just crawling with hippies all the time, 24 hours a day, right? And that was just sort of the south end of Laguna, and it just got weirder as you went north. And
you're exactly right. And then
and what you said though, it is a spectacle though. It was a circus, and it went on for years, but you nailed it. So I got the impression that because it's written with such depth of character and depth of place, all of it, I got the impression that while you've written Laguna a few times prior, this one seemed different. This one seemed almost like you'd been waiting for the right time in your life to tell this story. Am I reading too much into that?
No, I think you're right. And I wanted to go back to that time for the reasons we just talked about. Being young at the time, being impressionable, and seeing all that kind of stuff. And I think also in choosing 1968 because I was kind of there as a kid and experiencing it with these wide eyes. I got lucky in that, because 1968 was a seminal year in the history of America, and as personified by California, as personified by the coast, Laguna Beach. I mean, everything that was going on in the country was going on there, and so for me to be able to write about that through that young man's eyes again. Makes it. I was lucky to write that. When I set my very first book, Laguna Heat, was set in Laguna Beach. Obviously, it was published it in '85. So I started writing it in like 1980, and it's a contemporary tale of 1980 to 1985. And 1980 to 1985 in Laguna Beach was a fantastic time to be living there and writing about it and all that stuff. But it couldn't hold a candle to 1968, just as far as the world around it. There was no Vietnam War. There were no hippies. There were no demonstrations in the street. There was no there were drugs, of course. Laguna's always had drugs, but it wasn't an invasion of there wasn't a local brotherhood internationally selling LSD from places like Mystic Arts World. So 68 was a magic year, and I'm glad that I could kind of stub my toe on it.
How much, speaking of Mystic Arts World and the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, which was a real outfit, right?
Yeah, it was a licensed in California church, among other things. The Brotherhood of Eternal Love. They preached, love, Jesus, Buddha, and LSD, and they thought everybody should have all of those things all the time. and they took it upon themselves to supply those things to people, and that's what they really believed in. They believed in higher consciousness through acid and prayer and all that. And I don't know any of them personally. I've interviewed a few kind of I've interviewed a few of Brotherhood guys who were willing to talk about that time and stuff, and they really were, especially I think, a very iconoclastic, strange, enthused kind of group. You know, they weren't the mystic zealots that a lot of people made them out to be, and they weren't the hardcore international drug smugglers that they were made out to be, although they did some of that, you know, very, very, very proudly. So anyway, interesting group of cats, to say the least. And most of the ones that I've talked to are happy to relive that time and tell me a little bit about what they did. And they've got some wild stories.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
You know what I really was fond of in the narrative is it's very easy to fall into the trap when we're writing retrospectively of being, I don't know, judgmental kind of, and writing through a contemporary lens. And I thought you did a brilliant job of, first of all, it's written in a very unusual present tense style that I really admired very much, because I know how it's difficult for me. I've tried it before and I bailed because it's just hard to maintain. Yours, it's always happening in real time, the way your story unravels.
Yeah.
And secondly, there's really no authorly judgmental attitude about any of it. This is all through the lens of a 16-year-old boy who's coming of age and faced with interesting challenges of 1968, political, military, drugs, sex, the whole deal, in Laguna Beach of all places. And I swear, I felt like I was there. I did not want this book to end.
That's nice to hear. That's good. That's good.
Well, did you find it? Did you find yourself having to do that, or is it just your nature to just write and not judge your characters?
Not to judge so much. You know, I was pretty conscious about not judging according to the way people in 1968 were judging each other. You know, I mean, 1968, just like our years now, 2020, 2021, was an extremely, people like to say, divisive, what we are now. Well, it was very divisive then. I mean, the genders were at each other's throats. Race relations were terrible. The assassinations, the war. I mean, people were polarized in max in 68. And so my going in position on this one was to let Matt, let Matt see and interact in this world in which he's looking for his missing older sister, and not fall into the cliched camps that a lot of people did. So I try to stay fair. I try to show that just for example, that the big mean cop who likes to throw hippies into his van, his arrest van, Moby Cop they call it, really has he has some real principles about him, because he actually believes that marijuana is going to undermine and destroy this generation of youngsters. He believes it, and some of his contemporaries did back then. And so that's okay. I think I can portray that, and I think it's okay also to give nuance to the skullduggery of the drug people maybe, and the general lassitude of the stoners. I try not to get too hard on anybody. And again, Matt Anthony, the main character who sees all this and over whose shoulder we experience this, he gives me a break there, because he's just 16, like you mentioned, and he's not super judgmental yet. He's young enough to be. He's very impressionable. He's very alert. His senses are very alive, but he doesn't have firm, hard. He's not a Republican or a Democrat, and he's not a stoner or a teetotaler. He's kind of a kid in the middle, becoming as the story goes. And so I tried to be non-judgmental about those people, and sometimes see any people, my characters mainly, and see the good and the weakness and the foibles in them, as well as the courage and how hard it is to be a mom. Julie is battling an opium addiction and trying to raise her kids who are afraid and not having a good time of it. Matt's older brother's in Vietnam fighting. Matt's one step from being homeless most of the time, and his sister's vanished. And so his poor mom's dad's gone. He's long gone. He's been in Texas for years. So mom's trying to hold this thing together. And I wanted to try to show her weakness and vulnerability as a world-class stoner, and also her strength and conviction when it comes to trying to care for her daughter, especially who's in the wind. She's gone.
Well, I thought you did a really beautiful job of developing Julie and the dad, who either of which could have fallen into caricature because of the times, because that this is part of the narrative structure to show where the boundaries of society were.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how humans are. Humans don't do that way. And I thought you did a brilliant job, particularly with the dad, because he becomes a very complex, interesting presence.
Well, thank you very much. I worked hard on Dad. I liked that character, starting with Laguna Heat back in '85. Since then I've published 20. Well, this is my 27th book, and I think virtually every single one of those novels that I've written features Dad. Dad's in almost every one of them. My dad looms large in my life. He's no longer with us, but he was a one of the seminal humans in my life and upbringing, and so I write about him in one way or another, book after book. So yeah, thank you. I'm glad he touched you, and I think in the book that he kind of moves from he moves from being a cliche to being a man, a more rounded, full man at the end. And I think that just as Matt is growing, as an adolescent into young manhood, his old man, Bruce, is kind of doing the same. He's finding his own truth and his own adulthood also.
Aren't we all kind of doing that?
Yeah, I think we are, and I think we do, and that's why novels are great, because they can.
Yeah, well, it takes a lot of balls to write it that way, though, and it worked.
It worked, yeah.
So I have to ask, I couldn't help but notice the dedication at the beginning of the book, mm-hmm. and the name of the character and his propensities to art and the art community. What's going on there?
Well, I just flat out had to name the character in the book Matt Anthony, because my brother's name is Matt, and like Matt Anthony in the book, my brother is an artist and an inventor and a waterman. He's a surfer, and Matt's a fisherman. So anyway, the book is kind of an homage to my brother in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of him in there. There's Matt. The two Matts have a lot in common, but then there's a lot that's not in common. And brother Matt just laughs and goes, "I would never do that. What'd you put that in there for?"
Was your brother part of the Laguna art scene?
No, not really. He was. He's been an artist for most of his life. His real creative training and growing as an artist was done at the California State University of Sacramento.
Really?
I have a really interesting, intense art program up there, and he got a master's degree, painting and sculpture, and so that's kind of his deal. He was never part of the Laguna art scene, no.
Well, it's as I recall, especially back then. I don't know. It's probably still the same. It was a very tight-knit community, and they took care of each other a lot. Mm-hmm. And you were either part of it or you weren't part of it.
Yeah, you're totally right, especially when it comes to the then newly forming festivals. Like 1968 was the first year of the Sawdust Festival, if you can believe that. And those guys were insular and for each other, and cliquish and all that good stuff. And you were sort of either on the bus or off the bus as an artist, in Laguna.
68 was the first year.
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Well, I think you might be. I
I think I read
get
that.
I think I was there. I think my buddy's mom took my buddy and me to the Sawdust Festival that year.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm gonna reappreciate that memory a little better.
Yeah.
So as you were doing this, as you were immersing yourself in the psyche of 68, which we kind of do when we're writing, or I do anyway. And I try to listen to the music of when I am writing and just try to kind of stay there so that I remember what it is I'm doing and what their frame of reference is. And I was wondering, did it occur to you as you were going through here, oh my God, the more things change, the more they stay the same. This is 50 years on, and we're still up each other's patooties about all the same stuff.
Absolutely, Baron. That was foremost in my mind. I was thinking, God, 1968 and 2020 sure have a lot in common, and all the stuff we were just talking about. I mean, totally does. They do have those times in common, and seeing, yeah, it's like, we've come this 52 years later and we're still at each other's throats about the same stuff, and so that definitely comes to mind. I think, there's ways in which we as, Americans, Californians have all, moved beyond 68 and in some ways, and our world now is different, but the similarities just ring awfully loud, and they ring awfully true to me, and they did while I was writing it, especially when I was writing that book, 1,000 Steps. I wrote the first sentence in the day of the lockdowns in 2020, March of 2020. Wow. So I wrote all of this crazy Laguna stuff against COVID, literally locked down in this house. And so when you look then at well, how's 2020 different than 1968? Well, we have a pandemic, and 900,000 Americans have died with it, and that's how it's different. That will set 2020 aside and 2021 and on to the future. It will put us in a unique place in history forever.
Man, I should say so. It certainly it colored the way I wrote and the way I thought during that year.
I'll bet.
Well, it's just I don't know how it could not. I mean, we're all living that same reality, and it's just it was surreal. It was bizarre. Did you enjoy going back in time that way? I'm not familiar with you having done that before.
No, I've never done that.
I think I've read everything you've written, by the way. So,
wow. Well, that's...
I am a bona fide fan, but
you must be.
I don't recall you having gone back in time that way.
No, never extended like that. I was almost always right about whatever year I'm in, so never have I done that. It was I think because of the weirdness in the air of being locked down in COVID and this strange pandemic sort of gripping everybody like a giant python, just a squeeze tighter every day, and that I think made me really appreciative of the bank of memories that I'd carried around for so long, to be able to go back to that time and just kind of immerse and lose myself in it. I used to think that escapist fiction was a pejorative term, and I never saw myself as a reader of fiction for the purpose of escaping anything. I always wanted to learn more rather than escape. But when I started writing this book, I changed my mind. I thought, I kind of want to escape. I'd much rather be in 1968 Laguna Beach than stuck in Fallbrook during a pandemic lockdown. I mean, who wouldn't, So.
Well, like I said, that was my reading experience with this. Is I didn't want to leave 1968 either, and I had to because the book ended.
Yeah.
So, would you consider going back and doing it again? Was it a fun experience for you, or was it been there, done that?
Well, both. I'll tell you, the writing of the book was, I've never, in all my many years of doing this, I have never written more and faster and had a book just rush me and give me the story like this. It was the fastest by far that I've ever finished a first draft, and it was the longest by far. It was 600, 700 pages long, and I cut it out in half by the time I went back for the final edits and stuff. But so anyway, the book rushed me. It really, really came at me hard, and I could barely write fast enough to keep up with it. And when I was done, I knew that I had a good book on my hands. I felt that I had written a good novel. And my very first thought was, it was so much fun to write this book, and I liked Matt so much and stuff. I want to do the sequel. I just want to keep it going. I want to just start tomorrow and see what Matt's going to do as an 18-year-old or whatever. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. And I found a better book to write than that, I think. But I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to intrude or make worse, water down, dilute's the word I'm looking for. I didn't want to dilute that book with a sequel. So no, I don't think I'll do 68 again. I don't think I'll pick up Mad Anthony again. Maybe, I don't know. If people love the book, maybe I'll do that. But thanks for asking, though. I was really tempted. I thought, man, I got to do that again. And I thought, nah, I don't think so.
Well, when you do something that's that immersive, at least for me, it was hard to let go of for a minute,
Yeah, me too. I really liked being there, and I liked being in that tone of voice, and I like that snappy present tense stuff, and yeah. But
have you done that before? Have you done that present tense deal before?
Yeah, I have. I've written long passages in the present tense. I've never done a whole novel that way, I don't think, Baron. No, first time. Yeah.
Well, I was about 50 pages in when I recognized it and went, holy crap, this whole thing's happening, like it's unfolding in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's tricky.
It is tricky.
Mm-hmm.
It's like second person kind of stuff. That's super tricky too. Don't start it unless you're going to finish it.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Because you really can't. I mean, if you're going to write a novel and it's going to be present tense, you're going to have a tough time going back and forth into the simple past tense or whatever. It's tough.
It's certainly the best mode for this story, I thought. I mean, I in retrospect, I can't think of a different way to tell it that would have been better.
Yeah, you could have written the whole thing in a third person simple past. It would have been pretty. You could have gone scene to scene that way. But there's something neat about that present tense. It took me a while to get used to it. It's been around and widely used by writers for decades now, but not forever. I came to it back in the 80s, I think. Jay McInerney and Bright Lights, Big City, and that really, that was a second person book, but it was the tense was present, and so anyway, over time I kind of grew fond of it, and I wanted to give it a try here, and I thought that it would be the ideal way to present Matt's world with immediacy and kind of a minimum of filters.
So 27 books in, and I don't know, any idea how many short stories and so forth?
Oh, a dozen maybe, not too many, 15. Okay. Yeah, maybe closer to a dozen, I don't know.
That's pretty remarkable. So 27 books in, how has your process changed?
It hasn't really changed too much, Baron. I think what's changed for me is I spend more time now hatching the story out ahead of time before I start writing it. When I was young and I finished my sixth draft of Laguna Heat over 6 years, and the work on that book was finally done, and it had been accepted for publication. Say it was a Friday, and I started writing my next book on Monday, and that was I kid you not, that's how crazy and ambitious and adrenaline charged I was to be writing, and to be a writer. And so that's changed. That's changed over time. I spend months sometimes now trying to get to the point where I'm imagining a story where I can hear and see that first sentence, and I know that it will lead to a good second sentence. It just takes me longer now to get going. And I think I know for a fact that I'm much pickier now about what I write about and how much I have to know about a story before I begin it. I'm much more calculating. I think that a lot of writing it's not just how well you write. It's the story that you choose to tell. You can spend a lot of beautiful words on a crummy story, and you still just have a crummy story. You want to pick that story that you deserve or deserves you or something like that. So I try to think, and I try to make something that's whole and should be read. I always tell myself that, Jeff, write a story that should be read. There's too many books out there that it doesn't matter if you read them or not, but write a story that should be told, that should be read. Think of your reader. So
is there pressure to not do that for you? I mean, at your stage in a career. I don't know how to phrase that differently, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Are there people that say, don't worry about that so much?
Well, I'm sure. Yeah. Some writers are, they just have, they have good instincts for what people like to read. They're natural born popular writers. And that doesn't always mean that their stories are particularly good or should be read, at all. Sometimes they are, often they are, good writer's a good writer. And, but I do think sometimes that, writers of any quantity and success at all will tend to be trapped sometimes by their conventions, their own conventions, and their own success and all. And rather than asking themselves, is this a story that people should read? They're asking themselves, is this a story that people will read? It's like, yeah. So I think, and I'm guilty of that a little bit. I've used certain tropes and conventions that I have found to be liked by people. Like I listen, critics, but even more just regular readers, like people I meet at a book signing or something, saying, I really liked the scene where Matt Anthony goes fishing, and I'll put that away, and in the next book that I'm writing, I'll see if I can come up with a fishing scene or something, not above that. Plus, I like the damn scene to start with, so of course I'll write another fishing scene.
Well, is there an aspect of writing? Well, I mean, I'm sure there is. There is for all of us. Question is this: what aspects of the process do you like best, and what do you like least?
That's a good question. That's a writer's question. I'm lucky, and probably like you. The reason that I do this is because I really do kind of like to write. I like it, 7 a.m. comes early on when it's winter, and I have to get up and go out to my little barn here and write a book in the cold. But basically, I like it. I like the work. So for me, the rewards are a good sentence or a good paragraph or a good line of dialogue, a good twist or turn of story that people aren't seeing necessarily, and the writing of the first draft without any notes and no input and just sort of minimal, conversations with your editor and agents and stuff. That clean first draft where you really are, you've got a ream of 500 blank sheets of paper and it's your job to fill them up. I love that part. I think that's great. And then, revisions are just a bear. They're just really, really hard. They're mind spinning sometimes. I'm working on a book right now that moves back and forth in time, decades and years. Yeah, and so, oh man, the timeline on that thing is when I go to rewrite that thing, that's going to be tough. So the rewrites are tough, and then um, promoting a book is kind of hard. Back in the old days, and it will probably be that way again before too long. All of us authors, publish a book, and you get on the plane and you fly around and you go to book signings and you do readings and all, and that's very ego satisfying, ego building, and flattering and fun, but it's very exhausting too, and that's probably my least favorite part of writing is trying to go out and sell my own book.
Right.
I like the writing of it.
And it sounds like for the same reasons that I feel the same way. I love meeting readers. It's not about that. That's the best part of the whole game, is meeting readers and talking and signing books and stuff. The transit process has become a nightmare these days. So just contemplating getting on an airplane is sort of daunting.
Yeah, I agree.
But the other, the other part of it, the physical element, just being away from home for long periods of time, and kind of not being in your zone where you can, I don't know, I can't write on the road, so it's just a thing for me. But anyway, it's very interesting to hear where people's likes and dislikes are. But again, I mean, I know that for you, we've signed together before, mm-hmm. and I know that your fans love to talk to you, and you are really a great, accessible, wonderful author to meet.
Well, thank you. I enjoy that part of it, just like you do. I like talking to the fans, and I'm always curious to find out what they like and don't like about a book. I'm always surprised, and
exactly. It is surprising sometimes, mm-hmm. isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So speaking of that, we got this brand new book. It's out just today, I think. And where can your fans find you and your schedule on the web so that they can come see you and get a book signed?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, I have a web page, www.tjeffersonparker.com, and there's a calendar schedule on that, and it'll list all the events and stuff. I'm going to do a few starting well now. I'm going to be doing some live events at bookstores and
actually in bookstores with humans and stuff.
A couple. Ones I don't have to fly to for the reasons that you just said, but I live near San Diego, so I can drive to LA and Orange County and San Diego and do
right
stuff
on.
Like that. Yeah. So anyway, go to the webpage and check out the calendar, and I'll be doing some Zoom talks, and some of those are interactive and some not, and so I'm around. I'm easy to get, and I'm easy to contact too. I have an email address on the website that anybody can, if you want to write and say hi, and talk about the book, whatever. I'm easy to get.
And do you respond to those? Do you answer them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I have a nice Facebook page too. I think it's called an author's page, something like that. And I do posts and things on that, and I'm gettable through that page too. So and Twitter, I tweet out now and then. I'm not a social media guy at all. I'm not very good at it, but I do have a small presence in those ways, and I'm track downable. So get a hold of me if you want to talk book.
Well, it is important that that people recognize you're also an author, and that takes time. And you need a little free space for your imagination to do its work so that you can write the next book. So we can't be promoting all the time, right?
No, spoken like a writer, Baron. You know the drill.
So I have to ask you before we jump into the final phase of this whole torture fest for you. So. Do you have a passion project that you've had in the bottom drawer of your desk that you've been thinking about doing someday?
No, I don't.
Because you just jump in and do it. Every time you have a passion project, you just write it.
I just write, and there is a bit of what's the word, precedence, or there's a bit of that great hidden secret book that you ask about. There's some of that in everything I write. I break off little splinters of that. It seems to be the most that I can get my head around, and I do feel that there's in there some a great story to be told, and I'll keep looking for it. And I think each of my books contain yeah, shards of that great story. And maybe I'll get a bigger hunk of the ore next time. It would be neat to write, the great American novel, whatever that is. And so I'll keep trying. I think it's good to keep your sights high, and to try to find that one thing that you were born to do. And
Well,
yeah.
I've sure admired your courage, and I don't mean courage because you've done something so radical or anything, but that you don't ever constrain yourself. You never have, not from Laguna Heat to Little Saigon. That's kind of a jump.
That was a jump. That was a big jump. Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that, being able to make those kind of jumps. And I always, I've enjoyed writing my series. I've written 3 series. One was 3 books, and one was 6 books, and one was 4 books. Of the 27 that I've written, those were series books. And as much as I enjoyed writing them, I think that writing series books is more difficult and less enjoyable than writing standalone novels. And I think that my best work is in the standalones that I've written, like this one, like 1,000 Steps.
Well, I think it's due. Well, first of all, I would disagree with you. I think your series are as solid and propulsive as any of your standalones. I mean, you really have a unique gift for both story and character, and that's not, as you know, that's not common.
Well, those are beautiful words, and I thank you for saying that you think that those that my series books hold as much water as the standalones. I value that a lot, and I do find them hard to write, and I always think that I could have done better. But then I think that of my standalones too. We all hold ourselves to ridiculously high standards.
Well, sure. When we think about a series, that's like that's 1,000-page novel, right? That's a lot of depth that you get into with characters. If you're doing three volumes at 300 pages apiece, that's a lot of character development, and it's a lot of knowing where you need to go and where to stay away from, and just all of that stuff. It is a different kind of challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. I thought when I started writing when I decided to write a series way back in the 90s, a three book series I wrote, I was surprised how difficult it was to write that first one, and then be expected to follow it with your very next book be about the same character and basically the same setting and the same job, and she was a sheriff's deputy. So I had all of these things that I knew about this character, having written the first book, and I was surprised how hard it was to find something new to write about. I was surprised that I had all this information about this character, stuff that I would spend months sort of dreaming about before I wrote the first book. And now I have that. I know her name, I know where she lives, I know what color eyes she's got, I know her job, I know her boss, I know her cat, I know her son, all the stuff, But then I thought, well, I know too much. I don't know. Where's the mystery? And so anyway, I do admire immensely, the great series writers in crime land America. I love Michael Connelly still, and I think Chuck Fox is terrific, and those guys just they crank out these series, and sometimes it's 2 series, two series characters, and they just do a terrific job, book after book, and I admire them immensely for that, because it is not easy.
No, you know what? None of it's easy, and like I said, I admire your courage as a writer for 27 books so far, and every one of them has been just all out. It's light the fuse and let her rip.
Thank you.
And just one more time before we do have a tradition here at the Writers Bar, and we call it it's last call.
Okay.
We're going to do 3 quick shots, but before we do that, I just want to pimp the book one more time. There it is. You got to buy this thing. You got to read this thing.
You got to get it just for the cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you really need with this is Jeff Parker's autograph in there. So go see him at a signing.
Yeah, please do.
All right, so here we go. We're going to do 3 quick shots, okay? And you don't actually have to take shots.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the first one. Your first paying job.
My first paying job? Yeah. I was a box boy at Alexander's Market in Tustin when I was 13 years old. Yeah.
I know where Alexander's Market is.
You do?
I do.
I'll be darned.
So you were a box boy?
I was.
I'll say, how old were you?
I was either 13 or 14. I think it was 14. I think you had to be 14 legally to work in California at that time, a part-time job, summer job, So yeah, Alexander's Market, Jeff Parker, box boy.
Do you remember what your hourly wage was?
It was incredibly high. I couldn't believe how much money it was. It was like $2.12 an hour or something. It was.
Oh, wow.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, you were rolling in it. I thought it was.
I was rolling in it.
A buck.
Maybe it was $1.75. I don't know, but I know it wasn't. It wasn't very much.
Wow! If I had known, I would have moved up there myself. Okay. All right. Second one. First album you ever bought with your own money.
Okay, I'm gonna say that was Beatles 65.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can remember they were $1.99 at Save-On if you bought the monorail, and if you bought the stereo, they were $2.59. So I would buy the monorail because I had this ridiculous little portable.
One of those turntables where you put the needle down and.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Little tiny thing, and it folded up into like a little suitcase. And then you folded it open, the speakers came out, and for $1.99 you could get Beatles 65 and literally wear the vinyl out with the needle, which they were so heavy and so sharp. I'm sure you remember that as a musician. I mean,
I do remember that.
Yeah.
All right, and the third shot, your first concert.
First concert?
First concert.
Jethro Tull. Anaheim Convention Center, 1969.
Dang.
Yeah.
And okay, did he have an opening act? Did they have an opening act?
They did have an opening act, and it was who opened for Jethro Tull that night? I can't remember, Baron. It was I just can't remember. Yeah,
well,
I'll think tonight when I don't need to know it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're digging deep into the memory banks. Anaheim Convention Center. That was a great venue. Tiny, awesome.
It was good.
Yeah. Well, they're very good, and good on you for being right on top of it like that.
Well, those are good questions. Well done. Those are good shots.
The memory synopses are still functioning. Well done. Hey, Jeff, I cannot thank you enough for being here with me tonight, and can't thank you enough for another great book. Your fans are going to love this one. If some guy named Lee Child hadn't have already said this, I don't know who that is, but okay, just kidding. But if he hadn't already said that this might be Parker's crowning achievement, I would have said it because it's true.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Well,
thank you.
But I would add, so far.
So far. There you go. There you go. Hey, do you have time,
Jeff? Hey, thanks, man.
Do you have time just to take a second and tell me about your series in the 70s, where it's set and how many books in you are?
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's set in Oregon in the 70s. It's in the rural part of Oregon. It's nice. sheriff who has been sort of co-opted into the job. He's actually a cattle rancher, but they ran out of guys that would be willing to do the job, so he does it. And he ends up discovering that the 70s are the times they are changing.
That's cool. I like the setting and I like the time, and I'm gonna read them.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to ask. Thanks very much. Well, listen, I sure hope I get to see you out on the road sometime soon. And great luck with this book. I loved every second of it, and great characters as always. And always a pleasure to see you. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Baron. Appreciate it much. We'll talk again.
All right, my friend. See you.
Aloha.